Greetings, beloveds. This is Amy Caryn Johnson, the Earth Channel. Today, I'm not going to have a poem for you. I really want to get more into astrology. And so I will begin with an introduction to my innovative form of astrology. I'm essentially trying to combine the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching as they are shown laid out in human design. And they are in human design using the tropical zodiac. And I believe now, especially, I've been playing with this a bit for several months, that they should stay that way because there are certain hexagrams, certain gates, as they're called in human design, that are aligned with the equinoxes and the solstices and the midpoints in between. And those 8 gates are in the heart, what human design calls the G center, but I call the heart. It is about love, self, identity. The yellow or white diamond in the middle. And so I'm leaving them there as they are aligned with the tropical zodiac. However, I am taking, sometimes they show the zodiac with the 12 signs overlaid on it, and they have that as tropical as well. I am overlaying the sidereal zodiac, which is different by almost an entire sign. And so I will post that on this video for you to see how I'm overlaying those. And so, for example, one difference is that Jupiter has only just now entered the sign of Aquarius. If you're paying attention to tropical Western astrology, it has been in Aquarius for quite some time. And the main reason that I am using the sidereal zodiac is because that is where those constellations actually are in the sky. So I'm going to also include a screenshot from my own star app that I have on my phone. And it shows you quite clearly that Jupiter is in just the beginning of the sign of Aquarius. And so I do believe that the stars and the constellations matter. And Vedic astrology has been using the sidereal zodiac for a long time, forever basically, although there are slightly different ayanamshas, slightly different calculation points, which change things a little bit. And so the ayanamsha, if you're that advanced to know what that is, that I use is the Lahiri ayanamsha, although sometimes I have been also looking at the Krishnamurti ayanamsha, which is pretty close, but there are slight differences. So, that being said, just one other thing to note. When you overlay the sidereal zodiac with the 64 hexagrams and you leave the hexagrams aligned with the tropical zodiac, but you overlay the sidereal zodiac, what is going to happen very slowly is that the sidereal zodiac is going to rotate at a rate of 1 degree every 70-some years. I always say 70-some. I should actually look up the exact number of years, but it is very slowly. But as you can see by the fact that there is almost an entire sign difference, tropical astrology, Western astrology, has been typically using that tropical zodiac for a long time. And so it's pretty off as far as the signs are right now. But eventually, these sidereal signs are going to change what gates they overlap. And so it's just important to note. I do believe that the hexagram should stay tied basically to the Earth, to the solstices and the equinoxes, like I said. And they sort of show us these gates and how that astral or universal or stellar energy comes in and is filtered into us here on Earth. So that's just my theory, basically, that I'm working from. I do believe astrology is supposed to evolve with the times, and so this is my effort, one of my many efforts to begin to evolve those things. Now, Vedic astrology typically does not look at the 3 outer planets of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. However, I do look at those as well. I think that's a somewhat important part of, excuse me, of helping evolve astrology with the times. That being said, I typically think of, well, most of you probably typically think of the sign of Aquarius as being ruled by Uranus. I know the vast majority of the people who are into astrology think of Aquarius as ruled by Uranus. And I do think there is a connection there, there's significance there, there's a tie of some kind. However, when you're using Vedic astrology, it becomes somewhat important to also think of the sign of Aquarius as also being ruled by Saturn. And it just has some key little mechanisms and tools here and there that if you also think of it as being ruled by Saturn, it helps you to see certain significant things that you will find in different charts and transits and so forth. And so that also means that in addition to Pisces being connected to Neptune, it's also ruled by Jupiter. And Scorpio, in addition to being connected to Pluto, is also ruled by Mars. And it helps different yogas to make sense and be seen. Yogas meaning union, and so that's basically the way that different planets come together with different signs or each other. The union of those, that's where the yogas term comes from. So today I'd like to focus on a fairly simple way to look at your purpose or dharma using astrology. And rather than using the Vedic chart, which you would normally see as either a North or a South Indian chart. The North Indian comes out with these diamond shapes, and the South Indian comes out in sort of a rectangle. Most of you are probably used to seeing the circle. And so, for example, if you go to astro.com, you can select sidereal. You can also find the Lahiri Ayanamsha, and you could also find the Krishnamurti Ayanamsha. I believe at astro.com I did not see a lot of difference there, so it does depend on your software sometimes whether you will see a difference. But that's the easiest way to look at your chart and to see the sidereal zodiac. I also sometimes refer people to Joni Patri's website if you want to see the diamond shapes and those different North and South Indian charts. I do believe she only uses the North with her free software. So I'll be posting and showing you with this video the circular chart as I have it with the sidereal zodiac and the 64 hexagrams. And I also want to mention, if you went to astro.com, you should also select whole sign, because that's one of the important things with Vedic astrology as well. Instead of having these houses sort of askew from the different signs, wherever your ascendant is, your rising sign, in that sign, you basically assume that that's your whole first house, whatever sign that is. And so that helps with some of those yogas and seeing different things from the perspective of Vedic astrology as well. And so that's what you'll see when I put this on the video. And I'll give you an overview of Dharma and how Vedic astrology looks at the different houses and how they are related to that. So if you look at the natural first house, which is Aries, it's a fire sign. And so the three fire signs, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, are all associated with Dharma, or our purpose. 1, 5, and 9, the first, fifth, and ninth houses. Those are the natural houses of the zodiac when you consider that Aries is the natural first house. We have next the earth signs, the second, sixth, and 10th houses, which are the houses of Artha, or work, basically. Material resources is another theme of those three houses. So the natural houses associated with those are Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. Then you have the Kama or desire houses. And with desire, you tend to find associations with social interactions. The desire to be friends with someone, the desire to make connections with other people, and that those are the 3rd, 7th, and 11th houses, and they're typically associated with Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. And then finally, you have the Moksha houses, which I would translate most easily if I was going to choose a single word with the beyond. You can sort of see it as spirituality. I believe literally moksha means liberation. And sometimes they're also associated with different fears. But by overcoming those fears, we achieve liberation, or we achieve more of a connection with the beyond by letting go of these different attachments that are associated with these 3 houses. Again, water signs. And 4th, 8th, and 12th houses, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. And so if you have a fire sign as your rising sign, whether it's Aries, Leo, or Sagittarius, then you will sort of naturally just feel a sense of purpose associated with those houses. You don't have to do too many mental gymnastics to get in touch with why you're here. Who are you here to be? What are you here to express? What kind of creativity are you meant to bring forth into this world? And perhaps what lessons are you here to learn? What teachers are you here to find? Whether it's one teacher, many teachers, whether it's in person, online, so on and so forth. Those 3 themes have to do with your purpose for being here. If, however, you have an earth sign as your rising or ascendant sign, then at first, at least, for the first half of your life, whether you consider that half to be up until the age of 30, 35, 36, 40, sometimes even 42, 45, somewhere in there. Around the age of 42 is often when we have our Uranus opposition. And so I felt a strong sense of midlife around that time when I reached that age. So up until then, we can feel like it's our purpose to earn money, to acquire material resources, to perform service, to do work, and to make some kind of impact on the world somehow. So, for example, I do have Taurus as my rising sign, and that is definitely how I felt for the first half of my life. But then if you look at where your fire signs end up being in your whole sign natal chart, and other charts might show you something along these lines as well, but for me, my fire signs end up being in the 12th, 8th, and 4th houses rather than 1st, 5th, and 9th. And so with that association of those fire signs, that sense of purpose and dharma being in the 4th, 8th, and 12th houses, which are normally naturally the houses of moksha or liberation, in this second half of life, I'm beginning to feel like my purpose has to do more with what is beyond this physical world as opposed to earnings and so forth that are associated with those earth signs. I've gotten much more creative. I've gotten much more interested in transformation, shadow work, and releasing attachments for sure. So I've definitely made that transition in the second half of my life toward feeling like these spiritual pursuits are more my life purpose. And perhaps if you reach that age and you have an earth rising sign, you may begin to feel that too. Then if you have an air sign as your rising sign, your desires will feel like it's your purpose to fulfill your desires, basically. That's your purpose. And if you flip it around, like I did with the earth sign for rising, you'll see that in where the fire signs end up landing are the natural houses, is the place of the natural houses of karma or desire as well. So no matter which way you flip it, fulfilling desires is going to feel like your purpose in life if you have an air sign for your rising sign. And your desires may change. You may have different desires as you evolve. And of course, all the different planetary placements and so forth do come into play at some point. This is just one simple way of looking at it. Your desires may end up being more spiritual somehow, but it will still have to do with your desires somehow, what you feel your purpose is. And finally, if a water sign is your rising sign, you will feel like, at least at first, your purpose has to do with spirituality in some way, going beyond, going into the beyond, imagination, creativity, that kind of thing, at least in the first half of your life. Then, perhaps after you reach midlife, whatever you consider that to be, whatever feels right to you, you may actually end up feeling like the material world has more significance to you. And I don't want you to go away with the feeling like maybe after midlife you're going to become greedy necessarily, but you'll perhaps see how to bring spirituality into a grounded practice. Grounding is probably becoming more and more important to you as you go beyond midlife, and seeing how those spiritual concepts can be brought into practical practices, practical methods, ways of really playing them out in reality. That may become more of your sense of purpose. So I hope you found that helpful. I just discovered this concept from Kapil Raj on the KRS channel. He has a great YouTube channel with tons of videos. If you're interested in Vedic astrology, I encourage you to check out his channel. I do have a few more videos myself, but I'm really just getting started. He's been doing this for at least a decade. So now I will check in, and I hope you'll join me with Mother Earth, Gaia, and see what she has to add. I'll invite you to close your eyes if you'd like, and take a few deep breaths. So Gaia is prompting me to remind you all, I'm thinking most of you already believe this, but we all reincarnate many, many lifetimes usually. And some of you who watch these videos may consider yourselves to be starseeds. You may consider yourselves to have only incarnated on Earth this lifetime for the first time. I went through a phase of believing that myself. So you may want to consider the possibility that you have been here times before, but maybe it was just a really different kinds of lifetimes, and so this can still feel very strange even if that is the case. And not only are we going through a form of ascension here, especially in this lifetime, but we have also gone through a process of descension. And sometimes that may have involved lifetimes on other planets. And it could have also just involved lifetimes on Earth here. The Lemurian period was at a higher point, a higher place in ascension, and then we descended even during the time of Atlantis. Atlantis represented a time when we tried to ascend, but there were some critical failures, I guess is the best way to put that we certainly learned from, but they in many ways can represent some soul wounds if we went through those times and those failures. But we learned from them, and that's why we're here now. I think many of you watching this video probably incarnated at least once during the time of Atlantis. At that time, some of us may have put too much emphasis on technology. Technology is great. Excuse the sound. But it is not the end-all be-all. It is not the sole purpose for our ascension, for our evolution. We are meant to evolve ourselves and even our own genetics, but that can easily be done without technology, without artificially tampering with our genetics. It can be done through meditation, through connecting with spirit, through intention, through sound healing, through being in nature, through opening our hearts, being heart-centered. And Gaia wants me to remind you that I made a video about this a few months ago. Our hearts are not simply just in the center of our chest, but there is great value to the metaphor of ourselves as trees, where the heart goes completely through the centers of our bodies as the central channel. From the crown of the tree, all the way down through the root and into Mother Earth. And so we incarnate with different purposes in our different lifetimes. And so never feel like your purpose, excuse the sound, is wrong. All purposes are wonderful. All lifetimes can be geared toward moksha, toward liberation, toward letting go of attachments, regardless of what your rising sign is. Everything truly is connected. There are no bad signs, no bad gates. Every aspect has a high expression that you can reach for and aspire toward. And that is the beauty of diversity. That is the beauty of getting curious about what others are like, what their preferences are, their perspectives are. And as mentioned, either last video or the one before, that is also the value of improvisation, that concept of the yes and. Just because we know we have certain needs and we know other people may have different needs, doesn't mean we can't still come together in cooperation. So just get curious about how that can happen. And the more that we connect with Source, the more we connect with all that is, the more our identity expands and we become something more than just a sign, just an aspect, just a gate. We go beyond our charts even. And the more we do that, the more we expand our sense of self, the easier it becomes to connect with others and to find those win-win solutions and beautiful harmony together. Deep breath. Thank you so much for joining me. Namaste, beloveds. Like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified of future videos. Thank you.